Teachers of Reddit, what was the most annoying thing you ever had to deal with in class? My students once welcomed a stray dog in the room, where he promptly vomited. The week prior, they had a dirty street pigeon in there, claiming it was a pet. It shit all over. I grew weary. Inability to fill in the attendance register. 30 in class. Only 27 names on register. Who hasn't filled in their name? We all have. No, you haven't. Who hasn't filled it in? Silence. Start asking individually until register is finally filled in. Amazing how people will argue that they have filled in their name when they haven't. Or when a student is absent and you're just checking with the class but one of them is adamant that they've seen them today. The principal. Easily the most annoying thing. The first school I worked at, the principal would go to every classroom every day. Sometimes multiple times per day. He and the vice principal tried to micromanage every aspect of teachers' classrooms. All it did was disrupt the flow of the class and piss off both my students and me on a daily basis. University level. So I am not sure if this counts. But he would come to class and watch television shows on his laptop. I don't have an attendance requirement. I asked him to please just watch them outside instead of coming to class. He said he was very sorry and would not do it again. After that, he was still pretty clearly watching shows in class on his laptop, with the sound down, but would click away anytime I came near. I don't understand. Parents who ask why I've not taught their 2-year-old to read. Dude. If they were ready and we had the staff to sit one-on-one to teach them, I'd love to. But I'm too busy changing them, cleaning and doing pointless paperwork. There is a lot more to learning to read than sitting a kid down and trying to shove books down their throats. Also, revenge poopers. Little Johnny got mad because I didn't let him put the Lego up his nose or keep hitting Sally. He goes and poops on the floor and waits for me to find it. I'm a computer science teacher. This is important as my students usually have access to a computer. One student likes to be hated by the other students. So he found an online tone generator and set it to a frequency that older people wouldn't be able to hear. But it would massively annoy his classmates. Thankfully, I'm not particularly old and have fairly tuned in hearing from a background in audio engineering, so I could just mute his computer. The most annoying part is that if he put as much effort into his work as he did into creative ways to piss people off, he could do really well. The country I teach in sells energy drinks to the small children on their break. Then they come into class bouncing off the walls and won't stop talking. The absolute most stressful thing I've ever experienced in my life. That would be really annoying. Luckily in the UK some point last year, most supermarkets had a 16+ rule on energy drinks. Bottle flipping and dabbing. To this day the sound of a half-filled bottle of water landing on the floor fills me with rage. I see a bottle flip and it goes straight in the bin or on my desk until the end of the lesson. My students used to dab as they entered the classroom and one time I dabbed back. They never did it again, haha. I teach English in a Chinese kindergarten, nursery. Annoying may be a tad strong, but it is unfortunately inconvenient and counterproductive when the local teacher is overeager. Some are taking an active part in the class, which is great. But oftentimes they step in to correct the kids and do so incorrectly, pronunciation particularly. Also due to the different teaching approach, and I guess impatience. They tend to push the kid and stress them out to give an answer without giving enough time to think and come up with something. To elaborate on the second point, I'd rather the kid gave me any answer by themselves, however incorrect, so that we can correct it together, than the teacher pushing or giving the answer and destroying the kid's confidence in the process. Just how much of a danger small children are to themselves and others. We've got to catalog every playground injury, which while understandable in theory is actually incredibly time consuming. And the kids have been taught to find a grown-up for everything, so one minute you'll be applying ice to someone who ran into a post, and then filing in the same forms for the kid who wanted a band-aid because they have a hangnail. Once during a year 10 maths class I was teaching, there was a really bad smell. It smelled like poop. At first I thought maybe someone had just farted. But it was much stronger than that. The students started to move away from the smell, and it turned out they were all moving away from one student. It turned out that one of the students in the class struggled from incontinence and had actually pooped his pants during my maths class. I never thought that I would have to deal with that, considering I only teach senior high school students. Poor kid. Especially in high school. I dealt it with bladder incontinence for a few weeks due to sciatica and a severely herniated disc. I had my 4th surgery since Christmas to fix all of this, and they bucked up so bad they almost killed me. I've been in the ICU since Tuesday. Horrific. How did you and the kid handle this? The paycheck. Oof. Some of my teachers openly talk about issues like that with the class, and I feel bad most of the time for them. I work at Taco Bell. My boss at one point was a teaching major. He dropped out when he was offered an assistant store manager position. Because it paid more than teaching does in our area. This 19-year-old kid making your lunch is making more than the people that taught him the skills needed to function as an adult. I had a student years ago named Marco. Marco has Tourette's, and his tics were usually calling out Mom, Lily, his sister, and most often his own name. Try teaching algebra when you hear Marco, and without fail, a few kids yell polo all year long. Note, only really annoying for me, Marco thought the exchange was hilarious and was quite the popular kid. I was doing relief supply teaching at an all-boys school in North London. The school had a reputation for being difficult, but never did I expect that I would have to try break a group of 16-year-old boys commencing a game of tug-o-war across the science lab. When they don't want to answer my question, and the silence through the whole class is deeper than Mariana Trench. Lollipop sticks with their names on. Someone better talk or the sticks come out. And everyone looks to the smart kid to talk. The sticks still come out. Being confronted with the fact that I cannot help all of my students out of the gutter. I teach in special ed. Students who got kicked off of every single school, even sped schools, in the region go to the school I work at. They have the most extreme behavioral psychological issues. I was always the strict but nice and respected teacher at my past jobs. But at this job, students just won't accept you no matter how hard you try and how nice you continue to be. Students insult me 1,000 times. Hit me and storm out of the classroom. Fight me during your break. Do all of those things as much as you please. It's okay. I will never give up on you. I will fight the endless fight. And one day, I will be able to help one of you to a better life. I had a student one year who smelled awful. The moment he was in a certain radius, you get hit with a wave of BO that would knock you over. The smell was so bad that the next class would complain because his stank would linger. I felt bad because I actually liked him and thought he was nice. He had to have been bullied. I'd see kids putting their shirts over their noses and I couldn't get mad at them. It was really distracting. I felt so bad because I also didn't want to go near him because he made me gag. We talked to his mom. The nurse gave him deodorant and said he could get some whenever he needed it. They even offered to let him use the shower in the gym. Nothing helped. The kid doesn't care about hygiene. There may have been a reason why. Maybe he was abused or no one taught him how to wash. But the only thing that got rid of that smell is when the school year ended and I didn't have him anymore. I instruct volunteer firefighters. There's one group that sticks out that we're troublesome. They wouldn't stop arguing with us for 30 minutes over one point on the test. Eventually it got to the point where I had to just say no, you're wrong. That's it. It's over. They were pissy for the rest of training over it. And these are adults. 20-55 years old. A chain of British education secretaries who decided that any 11-year-old who doesn't pass their year 6 exams is a failure. That amazing progress you have made. Failed. Special educational needs. Failed. You've only spoken English for a year? Failed. Nothing promotes lifelong learning like being branded a failure at age 11. I'm sure other language teachers will have experienced this. When you ask a question in the target language, the language they've paid to learn. A simple question. Suitable for their level. Because that's kind of your job, and the student looks at you. Turns theatrically to their neighbor. And says in a stage whisper. In the source language, their mother tongue or common language. Which you also understand to a reasonable level. What is he saying? There was a classroom that had this extremely high-pitched noise coming from inside the walls. It was so annoying but no one seemed to notice. Until I mentioned it. We all suffered together until the end of the semester. Memory issues. So much of education is dependent on learning one thing. Remembering it and applying lesson to the next thing. There are some students who just have sheep memories. Nothing is ever learned because they can't remember the first step or what you just told them 5 minutes ago. So it is an endless class period of telling them the first step. Looking after the other students in class. Coming back around to them and they are completely lost as to what to do. I don't even know what to do as an educator in these cases. Ton of stories. This year I have a kid in class who is a squirrely little boy, 9th grade, who thinks he is the funniest person ever. Also he believes he is a gangster and will be a famous SoundCloud rapper because his song has 6k listens. He randomly shouts things like gangsta in class. The other day I tossed him because I just couldn't deal with him making parrot sounds. Would just squawk loudly for no reason. The absolute worst part of it is that he's a dealer at my school and the other kids laugh at all his really stupid outbursts and comments and pretend he's cool so they don't lost their source. I lecture undergraduate students. I would say it's the sheer lack of enthusiasm and interest they exhibit in seminars. And it's costing them about £30,000. One student quipped that the assignment I gave them could be solved with doing Google searches. To which I replied, you do realize that higher education is entirely voluntary? You don't even have to do that if you don't want to. Edit, I teach law and ethics, so while they could use the internet to find some answers, the body of the essay is critical analysis. A 5-year-old who thought that saying excuse me before interrupting meant that interrupting was not rude. We spoke to her numerous times about it but her parents thought it was alright so nothing was ever enforced. It wouldn't be so bad if she only did it once in a while. But it was literally every 10 minutes. Few years ago, a boy in my class screamed, literally screamed. He'd found a white, sticky stuff all over the underside of his desk and it had went all over his trousers and hands, and then everywhere. As he'd wiped his hands all over my room. Cue my class, they were particularly challenging. And I was, at the time, new to the school, casting all kinds of aspersions over the cleanliness of the school, my room and, bizarrely, me. What had actually happened? The boy had brought in a tube of toothpaste himself and smeared it all over his desk just to cause a scene. You know how you get kids who clearly know they're doing wrong but believe they're being clever? In a class with about 33% of the pupils being non-white. He asks, sir, if I call all the black folk in the class monkeys, is that racist? Then when I sent him outside and gave him a serious talking to, he was all wide-eyed innocence. Sigh. I train staff for mental health work in the state of Florida. The most annoying thing by far about teaching was when they were tested. In the end I was expected to let them all cheat so they all pass because we need to get them through training. State facilities are it. I taught university classes. The most annoying thing I had to deal with wasn't actually a student at all, but the projector, which broke and would flicker on and off every 6 seconds and couldn't be turned off. 3 visits from its support in one 2-hour class later. They finally just pulled the plug out and I had to teach the rest of the class without a screen to explain with. 4 students. Though, it was the student who hadn't come in all semester. Showed up the week the 60% assignment was due. And asked me to walk him through what he needed to do to get an A. Having not even started or looked at the assignment sheet. It was due at the end of the day. He did not pass.